Hey, welcome everybody to the Flipside Streamcast Live. It is me, it is Flip. I am here with you on a Thursday talking to you about, listen, I'm excited. I'm going solo today. I have spread my wings. I am out of the nest. Dale is allowing me to do that. And that's not true. He's been great about helping me get to this point. But here I am. Let's talk about it. Going through some restructuring back here. So for today, you're going to see that. Next week, I'll have it all nice and set up how we wanted it to be. But so just bear with me on that. Some of my memorabilia from my old past. But today we're going to talk about a fun topic that I think it is ever changing the way we look at business, the way we do business, the way leadership is done. Because I believe we have had a fundamental shift in our society about employees, right? Now, from a business standpoint, from a hardline number standpoint, look, employers are still paying paychecks. They're still driving what they have to do. Still have to stay in business. So a disclaimer up front is real simple. You got to meet the mission. Let's just remember that, right? Whether that's revenue and sales, whether it's in the military and you're trying to get to wherever you need to, you got to meet the mission for all that. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, but what we have now seen is caring about your people coming to the forefront, right? And how do you do that? How do you just all of a sudden go, all right, my employees now want me to care about them, right? And we've seen it over the years about having a family relationship with people, still understanding this isn't anything new. Right, it's not nothing new that people have run businesses like families, and we've talked to people about that where it's this teamwork, and culture has been a title and a word that we've used about employee culture. Places have changed cultures automatically to do. You've seen that happen. I'll take Google for example. They have sleeping pods and they have free food and all that kind of stuff. But the truth of the matter is, not everybody can do that, right? So you got to somehow figure out a way to do that, right? Because employees want to know as a leader that you care about them. At the same time, you want to maintain that, hey, when the stuff hits the fan, it's the CEO, it's the leader's butt on the line, and that has to be a process, and it has to be a culture, and it has to be something that you work towards. And so we're going to talk today about empowerment and leading up. And there are two things that I think are absolutely relevant when it comes to this type of situation and these new types of situations that we're living, whether it's telework, right? And how do you gather that and empower your employees? And how do you lead up on necessarily a screen? To still back to the workplace. We're getting back to that point. It's going to be impressive to kind of see how that works. So all that stuff. So let's talk about empowerment first, okay? Because I think both of these subjects are definitely 100% a trust-based. They're trust-based things that you do, right? They're trust-based traits that you're able to put into place for things. You have to have trust. So my thing, it's honesty, consistency, and transparency from the top down builds trust, loyalty, and respect from the bottom up, right? I'm always going to say that. I'm always going to preach it. I'm humbly to say that I made that up, but I truly believe that, right? It has to start from a leadership perspective. The moment a new hire steps on board, right? The moment that new hire steps on board, this is how we operate. These are the balances of rules. Even if you want to be very open, there still has to be a hard left lane and a hard right lane. So people understand where the swim lanes end, right? The pool is always going to be there, right? And people are going to be walking outside the pool ready to throw you a buoy, but you got to know where your swim lanes are. And that's fine. Everybody needs to understand where their swim lanes are. But so then what do you do? What do you do upon that, right? Do you automatically empower employees when they step on board? I don't know, right? Some people are going to come with major credentials and major experience that it only takes a little bit of time for you to gain my trust, right? Implicitly, right? I mean, it only takes a second for you to understand that trust piece, and you empower them right away. And there's almost an expectation. let's be honest, right? When you bring someone in with big time credentials who have been at different places, your expectation is they're gonna do that right then and there, and you would almost be embarrassing them and making them feel bad if you didn't give them that empowerment right away, right? You're hired to do a certain job, do the job, right? People go to school, people have had experiences doing things, and guess what? Let them do it, right? That's one of the major things that we talk about all the time is let them do the jobs that they're good at, right? And we can get into micromanaging and we can get into kind of, interfering. But the truth of the matter is if somebody's good at something, just let them do it, right? You can have things in place to do balance checks and to do, trust but verification stuff. And we can get into that too. But the truth is let them do it, right? I mean, that's what it is. If you're building someone new, right, then you're going to have a lot more lane lines. You're going to have a lot more buoys for them to catch, right, if you're empowering them. And here's the kicker to it all. It's letting them make mistakes, right? You got to let them make mistakes. I think that's the power, the power of empowerment is you got to be willing to let things make mistakes. I'm going to reference kids, right? Those of you who have kids or obviously you were a child at some point, we either let our kids make a mistake when we know it's not going to necessarily hurt them majorly, and we'll definitely jump in if we think it's going to be something major, and your parents did it to you as well, and you can do that as employees, right? As employers, and as leaders, right? You can sit there and say to yourself, hey, I'm going to let him make this mistake because I know it's not a big deal, right? It may be with a customer that hey, we've known Joe forever. Joe's gonna help us out, right? On a sidebar and go, he's a newbie, he understands, and we'll figure that one out, right? But you let them make that mistakes because experience is gonna different, but you empower them to give them that, right? And it's a feeling. Let's be honest. Like true employee empowerment is a feeling. It's not saying, I got you. You know what? Go ahead and do it. That's fine. You giving permission as the boss to go ahead and do something, that's not empowering your employees, right? Your empowerment comes back when the feedback, and it's a circle of your employees feeling that they're not being watched all the time, being double checked all the time. They are literally feeling like, I got this, right? And he or she, the boss, is letting me do this, right? That's really important when you think about how it feels. It's a mutual thing. I trust you enough to give you this, right? And oh, by the way, I'm also, I feel like it's going to be okay coming from the back end. So, but then the question is how does empowerment start? And I'm going to give you a bold statement here. Just let it happen, right? Pick something that you can have someone do something for, right? And let them run with it, right? Let them see what they come up with, right? I think it was MacArthur or one of the old generals said, hey, don't tell somebody what to do, right? Tell them what the parameters are and let them figure it out for themselves. They're going to come up with new ways to figure that out. That's starting the empowerment process. That's starting to build the trust foundation that you need, right? Because people aren't going to, even if you have the reputation, a great reputation, you have all this, I'll reference the military here. You have all this chest candy with all these ribbons, and you've got a title, and a good friend of mine, John Mann, said, I don't look at any of that crap anymore. He's like, because it doesn't matter. They give medals out for whatever, right? And just for being there, for showing up, you can get a medal. And that's absolutely true, right? Not all of them. Most of them are earned, but some of them are that way. But who cares, right? I mean, until you prove that to me, right, you're not, I trust you that you've done it with other people, but you need to earn my trust, right? And again, sometimes it's very easy. You may know someone's referenced off you. I trust that person, so therefore I trust you, whatever it is, right? That type of thing. And if you have a boss and as a boss and as a leader, if you're honest, consistent, and transparent with the person, then guess what? You're starting to build that right away, right? And that's the impact. It leads to empowerment of your employees, which is super important, right? And the kicker to it all is that by doing that with each person, you are building, and I stay away from the word culture, but that's what you're building, right? You're building a culture where people feel open to be able to talk about stuff. They are open to make a mistake, try new things, right? You hear a lot about that, about innovation. How do you innovate if you don't try stuff and fail? Like you can't do that. So you have to be able to do that, right? And I just watched a great thing. One of the, I think it's the highest watched TED talk of all time, and I can't remember the person's name. He's an English lord who passed away, but he was talking about creativity and how we stifle creativity when people are young because we tell them, well, that's wrong, right? Or that's instead of just letting that happen, and then we have to reinstall that as you get older about creativity, which I think is, again, how do you empower people? You empower them by giving them the opportunities to be able to make a mistake and be okay with it, not blow up at them and flame spray scorched earth them, and be like, all right, cool, let's move on. We've just learned how not to do it, or we learned that doesn't work for us. So let's go back to something else. And that's important. It's super important. Like if you're not thinking about that, right? If all you're thinking about is, well, what's the bottom line on it? You're missing the next 20 things that can happen from the good of that creativity or the good of that failure, right? And I don't use failure that often. I use it because I think people like to hear it. I don't believe necessarily in failure. I believe that as long as you learn from it, even if it's longer, it's not a failure. And I believe that to the highest degree of how you can fail. And so I believe if you learn from it and you change from it and you make something new up because of it, and you don't stick to that kind of same regime and you change it, then it's not a failure. It ends up being a lesson. And I'm 100% all about lessons learned and how you do that. And when I look at empowerment, you got to look at what does the end look like, right? So when you get to that thing and they make those mistakes and they get there, what is it going to be at the end? It's going to be that they trust you more, that they're loyal to you more, and that they respect you more because you've allowed them to have that wiggle room, right? And again, swim lanes. Some things, right, are just culture. I get here, I'm in a new thing, and got it. I just got to learn the ways of how this business operates. That's one wiggle room. But there are fundamental jobs that are the same no matter if you're selling hot dogs or you're selling hammers. It doesn't matter, right? There's a fundamental way to do that. That's the core of stuff. The core that you come with your experience, right? You give that empowerment in the beginning. It's almost an expectation. Like I said, you expect people to know how to do that job. Yes, and you give them the latitude of the swim lane to just move around a little bit because they're getting used to their feet wet, right? It's the in-dock process. It's the onboarding process. Got it. You're all good. Now here's the expectation. Newbies, very different, right? Okay, I'll take a person because I want them to grow within our culture versus something else, right? Sometimes it's easier to get someone who's newbie. Sometimes it's simple financials, right? I can't afford that, so I'll grow one in between, right? I mean, that happens all the time when we do stuff. So we still need, and again, I look back to the first thing I said. There's a mission, there's mission success. There has to be that's a clear vision that you have to have and set from the beginning. So no matter how much empowerment you give somebody and how much they feel that they are empowered, the bottom line is that they still need to prove worth, right? Not worth as a human. That should be just given automatically. I absolutely appreciate you of who you are and what you bring. Not about diversity, right? We've talked about diversity and we understand that diversity is breeds better grounds for more innovation, more creation, better social structures. That's a proven fact that we get that. So the worth isn't about that. The worth is the value of what you hired them to do, right? And the empowerment now they feel to be able to go out and do it, come to you with something and say, what do you think? And you go, you kind of missed the mark. Go try again. Let me give you a few more guidelines to it, right? And be able to feel that way. Because I think that's important for you to be able to do. So think about that. That value from a business standpoint still has to be met. So as an employee, because we're just not talking to leaders, we're talking, and actually we are just talking to leaders, and we'll get to that when we talk to leading up. But as the employee or the person that's underneath the leader, you've got to remember that guess what? there's a give and take in all of this, right? There's got to be some ownership and some responsibility to how that's going to work out. So those are very important that we make sure that we hit every single one of those marks. So what else do we got? The employee ownership part, right? If they own their job and they understand how their purpose of doing what they do meets the mission that you're trying to do, and they understand the mission and the purpose of what the entire business is trying to do, and you put all the parts together and you piece them all together and go, this merges with this, and they're all cogs in this big machine that we call business X, and business X serves the people. This is how we serve them, and this is what they give. What you'll end up, again, look back on empowerment. It's a feeling. I now helped do that. Now take the word help out and go, I did this, right? We heard the story before about the baseball janitor who said, what do you do? And I said, and he said, I win World Series. That's what I do. I win World Series, right? My goal is to win a World Series. And they kind of looked at him crazy in the very beginning. And he said, if I don't clean this and it gets dirty and my players get sick or someone slips, guess what? We don't win a World Series. My job is to win a World Series. Getting to that point with your people, empowering them to feel that way, that feeling is all about empowerment. That's what it is. And you got to take the step. The step's got to be taken, right? Either way, take the plunge, give them something that they can work on, understand to give parameters so that you're not disappointed, they're not disappointed, right? Because that's the thing. If you don't do that with empowering people, if you don't set guidelines in the beginning, then it's okay. Then everybody's not going to feel the right way if you don't get to that point. So here's the point in case. I had a friend who had worked at probably 3 or 4 or 5 different big company jobs. I'm talking stock exchange, big company jobs. Had been there for, he had been at each one for maybe, I don't know, 5-6 years at least of every single one of them. But when he got there, those cultures were already set. And it was one of those cultures, when you talk about the Googles where it was like, this is awesome, right? That person went off and tried to start, and successfully started his own business, and tried in the very beginning to kind of just instantly gain that culture. And that he ran into problems. I'll be honest. He ran into problems because what he ended up happening was he ended up probably not realizing that the culture was there before and everybody had their lines, right? Because when he was there, it didn't seem like he didn't understand it, right? He didn't understand from a leader's perspective. He was coming in from a different level, right? It's like when you talk to a child and they don't understand the implications of what they're doing, but you could tell them, hey, by hanging out with these people, this is what can happen. Not just about whatever, but about the C, the D, the E, the F of how that all fits together, right? Culture is the same way. Employee empowerment is part of that. It's got to fit together as you move towards things, and it's got to be gained over time, right? But once you get it and your employees feel like, dude, I understand it, even if you have checks and balances. By the way, that's the other, it's okay to empower people and still have a check and a balance. I mean, the highest forms of government, our founding fathers talked about checks and balances to make sure things are happening, right? It's happened. Small business, if you took the risk and you own everything about it, guess what? You deserve a check and balance. You absolutely deserve it. Or if your butt's on the line because you're the head director of something in the military and you've got to talk to the admirals and the generals, guess what? You deserve a check and balance. It's okay. And not only should leaders be okay with that, but their underlings and their employees need to feel the same way and go, okay, I know I'm going to get checked. It's okay. It's part of the process. I know he still empowers me to do it, but he's there to do a double check, because guess what? In the ultimate, who owns it? It's not necessarily you if you're doing it. You own what you give, but you may not own the product as it pushes forward, right? It may be someone else's product that they want to make sure that they're giving the best. Because if you're a good leader, think about it this way. If you're a good leader, You've empowered your people to do something, and they gave you, and you promote that that's how your department works, that we do it this way. I empower them to do things, right? And I preach that that's how we do stuff, right? And everybody's kumbaya and everybody's good with that. If I'm preaching that to my upper people as the leader, if I'm preaching that to my uppers, the C-suite, hey, this is how we do business down here in operations, right? We empower people to do the things they do. We trust that they're going to do the things that they do. And then a product goes out and you don't check it before it goes out. What ends up happening? It's not just that you get egg on your face, but because you've promoted that process to everyone else, now you've allowed egg to drip down to everybody else, right? Now everybody's got egg on their face, and you don't want that. As a leader, I don't want that. I'm going to take the heat. My fault. I did it. It's me. Came through me. I thought it was a good thing, right? But there's still a trickle down effect, and that's not what we want, right? That's not what we want to end up doing. So are there checks and balances in empowerment situations? Yes. If you don't think that there is, or if you don't think that there needs to be, you're wrong. You need to. It's okay. And everybody has to be okay. You go back to culture. Everybody has to feel, hey, it's okay. I get it. I understand. You've got a job. Because what you end up doing then, again, honesty, consistency, transparency from me is going to gain trust, loyalty, and respect from them, the people I serve, right? Because if you listen to me anytime, you're always going to hear me say, I serve people that I lead, and then I serve the customers how I need to, right? I serve those people. I serve down and I serve out. Okay. And if you think that way, right, you talk about empowering people, you talk about working, you talk about a culture that you love to come to work with, and love to do, put the skills and the tech, whether they're technical or whatever, you put those skills to use and people are happy doing their job. Man, that's what I want. That's who I want to work for. Right. And so think about that when you think about empowerment. It 100% goes both ways, and it 100% needs to go both ways for those, and it's built on those trust factors, right? As we move forward with that. All right. So what's the second part? Well, the second part is leading up. Ooh, leading up. What's that? So leading up. Leading up, we've heard of we know what leadership is. We know about leading a group of we should feel privileged to lead a team, whatever that is, right? That's my team. We're going to lead it. It's our team, however you want to talk about it. But what about leading up? How do we lead up? Well, listen, I've given a lecture before on the color of the pen, right? What color is this pen? And it was that lecture was something that came from my military background, where officers, so people with a commission and a 4-year degree, become officers. If they join the military in any service, they become an officer. Officers from the beginning are I would say instant managers, right? They're instantly put in charge of places that they have the authority to sign off on things, right? They have the authority to do things. The higher up you go, right, as an officer, the more you learn about leading and managing. But you learn about the numbers of stuff more. You learn about the details. You hear from the people ultimately making the decisions. You hear their thought process before. Where an enlisted person coming up is usually more of I would say the backbone, right? It's the difference between white collar officers, blue collar enlisted. And that's not everybody works hard. Let's just put that out there right now. I know I didn't think so in the very beginning, but I do now. And so why do I say that? I say that because I used to give a lecture, and I still do, on what color is this pen. And if you told me, Keith, that's a black pen, it writes in black, I would say yes. And as a junior person, that's what you might say, right? But as you get older, the expectation for you, and officers are taught this from day one, and enlisted don't really, and I'm speaking Navy, but I know both you really don't learn that other about management things until really E5 as we move up towards kind of the ranks, and that's kind of a mid-level rank. You can all go up to E9 is the highest you can go, so E5 is there. You generally have someone who's been in the Navy or in the service anywhere from, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years all the way up to 10, right? So they're that level if you look at it that way. But when you ask what color is the pen, the answer that your CEO or your commanding officer are looking for is that it's a Pilot Precise V5 RT. It has teal, white, and purple on the outside inlays. It's a double click action, which is with a fine point that we have. This is a V5 fine point. It writes in black ink. Not only that, right now you can get them for $199 at Office Depot. Right now there's a coupon in the paper that you can take for buy one, get one free if you go to Walmart. And if you wait till Black Friday, you can get them on sale for a pack of 7, and you can end up paying for $4.99 for 7 of them, right? So that, now listen to the difference of, it's a black pen versus what I just gave you, which was all the details surrounding that. Well, that's part of leading up, right? So leading up is giving the information to the and getting things, not just what you're asked to do, but looking for more surrounding stuff around it to come. Now, does it come in different forms? Yeah. You don't know what you don't know, right? And if you don't have a transparent, consistent, and honest boss who's opening up about everything, you're not going to be able to get a leading up type of situation where you can give them all the information, right? And then you erode trust when that kind of happens. So when but you could lead up from being number one, right? Wow, thanks, man. I know you just got here, but you just covered for me big time. I slipped up. You just led up. So when we have a small something that had to be done and I missed it because of whatever, because I'm human. Thank you for picking up on that, right? And listen, it's difficult. Leading up is a very difficult thing to do if you don't have a good culture, because what you end up with is end up with people taking credit for things that people others do, right? And if you're a good leader, right, and you have something and you've empowered people to do stuff and they're giving you more information than what you have, then when you present that product, yes, you may be the spotlight, right? Maybe Flip's team did an awesome job, but guess what? If I have the opportunity at any moment in time to tell my ups to say, hey, it wasn't me. It was John, Jane, Jim, everybody down there. It was those guys and girls who did this, not me. I just helped them out and I gave them some rudder steerage, right? Because it's all an important cog. If you think about all of this leading up, you need this person and this. If I have a team of 5 people and they have 5 different job titles and they're giving 5 different things to the team, I also have a 6th person, which is me, who is leading that team. So that's interpreting all 5 people of what we need to do and what information they're giving, right? And then you're also adding the element of me as a leader understanding more than they do about what the uppers actually want and what their headspaces are in, right? Because think about that. If I understand what my boss wants and I can convey that and be honest, consistent, and transparent to my team, right? And say, hey, look, these are the things we need. I need this from you. And maybe if we have A, B, C, and D, and E, right? Maybe for this job, E's more, they want to lean more on E for this. They want something that looks more E than they do D, C, B, and A. Well, if I give that information down left and right, cool, good to go. But if I lead up and they give me that information and they say, hey, I feel like it's going to be like this, I'm going to give you more information so you can take it to your boss, that's going to be great. Great example, okay? I was fortunate enough to go on a long cruise, a deployment of 10 months to the Gulf in 2015. I went with a great crew on the USS Carl Vinson. We were the air wing that went on board. I was the lead medical chief petty officer, so the leading enlisted person for our medical. I had two flight surgeons, and we were doing so. in that staff, big boss, the air wing commander over, obviously my lead flight surgeon. And what I can tell you is I can remember that our lead guy, our CEO, if you will, wanted information from our department head. And he was going to turn something in. And I said, Dan, actually, it's not what I said. I said, Lorax, we all had call signs. I said, Lorax, if you turn that in, I'm telling you, brother, you're gonna get your ass handed to you. Like, that's not what they want to see. And he's like, but it's got all this information. And Dan trusted me. We still have a great relationship. He's a pediatrician out in Colorado. I love him. But he didn't know. And I had been in the situation before a couple times, so I had understood what they were looking for. I also had inside information because I had a relationship that I could go talk to the commander and kind of hear things, right? I had that kind of rapport that we talk about, that's so important. So I knew, I don't think that's what he's looking for. I think maybe if we tweak it here, tweak it here, tweak it here, tweak it there, right? So I was leading up. I wasn't going to present the information, right? The commander didn't know it was going to come from me or my suggestions were going to be there. It's fine. Dan was going to present it. Dan was going to take the credit for it, which was totally fine. Didn't matter to me. He was going to look good. Didn't matter. I led up, right? I gave him the information to help him out so he could be able to do that. You can do that in situations. Now, what's the big detractor from it? That person's now going to move higher than me, or that person's going to get something, and now I'm not going to. So what does leading up have to be connected to? That is leadership that will go back and recognize and make sure that those people who helped you lead up recognize, right? Or get recognized. So that is crucial to all of this. Because if I helped him, and he did, okay, and it didn't need to necessarily be recognition towards the next higher up. It was okay. People love attaboys and attagirls and thank yous, right? In the military, we give out coins. And dude, if you got a coin, I mean, that was awesome. I mean, you just give me a coin, right? Or whatever it was. I didn't, and there was no expectation. At that level, what I was at too, I had no expectation. But I want you to think about those simple tokens also about leading up. So if you have people who are helping you and giving you help and to push a product out the door, it doesn't necessarily require you, and it might be a Friday meeting that go, hey man, I just want everybody to know we got this project out, but I got to give props to, to Jane, Jim, right? And Jacoby, dude, that stuff was awesome. We couldn't have done that without it. We would have never got it to the people without it. Sharing that kind of credit, even that simple in a Friday meeting, you're building all the stuff we've talked about when we talk about culture and we talk about empowerment and we talk about all that stuff. There it is. That's it right there. That's it. By just a thank you. I can remember getting my first coin because I did something, right, as a young junior. And I was like, oh my God, look at this, man. I got a coin. This is so cool, right? It sits in a box right now. My kid plays with it all the time and what they really mean. It didn't matter at that moment. It gave me something that was like, wow, that's awesome. The Admiral gave me a 1-star coin. This is just great. So I think it's important that when we talk about leading up, it has to be followed by the recognition of the leader, right? Because if it doesn't, here's what you end up with. If it doesn't end up with a recognition, and again, remember, recognition does not need to mean, well, this person needs to be put up for employee of the, it might mean that. It might mean that it was such a big project and this person went above and beyond, right? That, man, here it is. We need to recognize them this way. What if that's whatever you can control, a day off of work, if you can control a bonus, if you can control whatever, right? If you can control that stuff, give it generously if you can do that, right? Because it's worth it to your employees. They're going to work that much harder. And then it doesn't become leading up. It becomes, this is just the way that our team works. And that's so important, right? So leading up is me, right? Helping my boss out when I don't really need to. Of course, they're going to expect stuff from me. Of course, there's going to be a job description that says, hey, this is part of it, right? You got to do X, Y, and Z. Cool. I don't expect you to do anything more. Do these things to perfection. Got it. And if I just did that, it would meet the mission and we would be good. Right. And you might have a very normal, positive culture. But you start leading up and helping someone saying, oh, dude, watch out, man. That one doesn't look good. Right. I'll give you another example. How many of you, and it happened to me when I started working telework, I'll send an email and I used to bring someone in the room, like a colleague, and I used to be like, read this and tell me how it sounds. And they'll be like, dude, you're really pissed off. And I'm like, okay, that's not how I want to come off. Hold on, I'll rewrite it. And I rewrite it. Hey man, come here and look at this again. Ooh, aren't you trying to? Are you trying to say this? Or are you trying to say that? Oh, all right, hold on. Right. And then you finally figure it out and you get to send it. I don't get to do that anymore now that I'm sitting at home. I fire an email off. So what do I have to do? Let me read it again. I try to step back and go, all right, Flip wants to say this, but my position and title need me to say it a certain other way, right? So, but I used to have people, that was a small piece of leading up to say, hey, come here, look at my thing, tell me how I'm sounding on this, right? That's a good small tiny example of leading up, right? So, excuse me. So what? But again, if you take advantage of that and you don't, as the leader, go back and give the attaboys and get recognition, you get a bonus. You better be pushing hard for other people's bonuses, right? You better be like, it's not me, it's them. I'm not saying give your own money away. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that, man, you better recognize them somehow, some way. Because if they're doing that, because again, and you could do this at the lowest levels. That's the best part about leading up, right? Here's the other part that you cannot, it is imperative that does not happen in leading up. You cannot look at that person trying to help you as a reason for them to want your job. Most people in life are going to have goals that are higher than the ones they're sitting at. It just should be natural like that, especially if you're listening to this streamcast or you're a leader where you are. I know people have other goals to want to get to. People have dreams and hopes that they want to do. If you work as the team, time's gonna tell. It's gonna pan out. I used to say this, and I still think this is true for any of my military folks listening. And I'm going to talk Navy specific, but I'm guessing it's the same way for all of them. I have never seen a person work hard for 5 years and not make the next rank. And usually it's within the next 3. And for those of you that don't know, 3 years is usually a normal time frame. It's an average of how long you have to wait for the next rank anyway to be eligible for it. But if you've worked really hard and something that has to do with also going on for Navy, it's sea duty and shore duty and going to teaching, instructing, all those things have influence. But I've never met anyone that didn't work hard for 5 years and not get promoted to the next rank or to the next piece. And I would doubt in a very different way, similarly, that in the civilian sector, we talk about at what point should you ask for a raise? We talk about where should you be looking for a new job if you don't see growth within yourself, right? And growth within the company, or it's just not there. It's not going to be there. So you need to think about that and say, okay, how does this all play into it? Right? If you're not getting recognized, like we said, by people and they're taking all the credit and not giving any more to the team, guess what? That's not a person you want to work for. Right? But again, ironically and coincidentally and coordinatingly, at the same time, you need to make sure that that team knows, hey, I know these people aren't gunning for my job, right? Because if we're all looking for other places to go, should we be training our replacements? Sure, we say that all the time in the military, right? Train your replacements. You don't get that necessarily in the outside world, right? Because you're not growing that fast. You don't have you shouldn't be having a high turnover. It's not a good company if you do. Military, though, our turnover rate's very high, right? I mean, it's because we're always moving up, or we're moving in the little small dichotomies of what we have. We're moving from command to command to command. So you move up from one command all the way up to the top of that command, and then you move to the next one, right? In whatever factors you can. So all of these are really important when we're talking about leading up, because again, it's not something that you can just, all of a sudden, it's not easy, right? It's not something that, and it requires trust. It requires loyalty. It requires respect, right? And from giving that and earning those types of things. And it requires leaders to be honest, consistent in how they do things, and transparent in what's happening. Those are key things when it comes to not only empowering your employees, but also from a leading up perspective, right? Of being able to say that to your boss. And listen, leading up is about personal relationships, right? It really is. You got to have personal relationships to be able to go, I know that she's got my back. I know that he's got my back, right? Whether that's the leader speaking, or whether it's the team member speaking, right? That has to happen, right? That has to be that way. Sometimes the team leader, you're when I call the poop screen, right? You're the poop screen of screening things coming down, right? Owning it, screening it out, and giving it to your team. That's part of the job. The higher you go, the more of a screen you become. And that's honestly, that's adapting. That's changing the narrative. That's putting it into the perspective of of the people that you lead, right? Which have a very different perspective than the people that you report to, right? And so you as a leader need to understand that and to be able to change that narrative for them, right? And provide the why, provide the reason, provide the purpose, right? Because everybody's looking for that, right? If you think about it, everybody's looking for, why is this important? And that could be from, the fry guy, the second, third shift fry guy at McDonald's, to the bank teller, to the military E5 on the battlefield. Why are we here? They all want to know that, right? We had a big, Sebastian Younger has a great book that talks about, all the, after 20 years of war on terror, soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen are coming home, and they're seeing this country divided, right? And the why is, wait a minute, what was I over there for, right? And it's a great book. And so that why has to be given at the smallest levels, to be able to empower people, to be able to allow them to lead up and help you, right? Because any leader that says, I don't need help, listen, everybody in the world needs help. Everybody, right? I'm trying to teach my 15-year-old it's okay to ask for help. It's okay that you don't need to take it on all of your shoulders. It's the same conversation I would have with a 35-year-old who was in business. Like, don't worry about it. It's okay to ask for help. In fact, let's be honest, I would rather, and I hope most leaders would, I would rather have you ask me for help, ask me for guidance, because then I know that you're going to think about it. You're not just going to, shotgun things off. And I would rather correct a problem and give you a little bit of rudder steerage. Again, my Navy analogy, but giving you a little rudder steerage in the very beginning, rather than waiting until, it's due to be able to do that, you know because I think it's easier that way, right? There are some things to let people go on, and you got to feel them out. That's what we talk about the personal relationships for. So very important in that kind of inspect when we talk about leader empowering people. We talk about leadership up. It's about trust. It's about personal relationships. Those are important. So those are the things, kind of, when you look at it from a perspective, again. And don't miss my first point. The first point was always, there is a mission. You have to meet that mission, right? And so when you find that toxicity slips in, I've talked before about the good, the bads, and the toxic of leadership, right? When the toxic slips in, or when you see that the situation is headed towards the bad route, you got to be able to stomp it out somehow. You got to be able to speak in a culture that allows you to do that, right? Transparent cultures do that. They allow that. They allow for those things to happen. Because look, mistakes are going to happen. People are going to misinterpret. Because what all of this is, what there's a word here, and you all are thinking it. You all know what this is. What? And it's the glue. The glue holds it all together. Communication, right? Communicating. You got to be able to communicate. I had a situation where I was, I had a family incident that caused me to miss something. There's nothing I can do. And my supervisor at the time understood, knew it just, we couldn't do it. And then later on, we went back and we rehashed it. We had a little bit uh, different view on a portion of that situation. I think they knew instinctively that it was something that I had to do. I couldn't just walk away, and I was grateful that it was accepted as immediate as it was. But later on, we had a discussion, and it came to somewhat of the financial portion of it, and it was logistics and financials, right? And it was interpreted two different ways, and it was just because of poor communication. And you want to know what was, I think, what worked out the best? Honestly, it was just being blunt and open and saying, "Hey, I interpreted it like this." And he said to me, "Oh, that's not how I saw it. And I didn't realize that's the way you saw it." Yeah. And then he said, "Well, this is how I saw it." "Oh, well, I didn't realize that's the way you saw it." And listen, we absolutely all the time make assumptions about things. We assume stuff left and right. We get caught. What is it? You make an ass of you and me when you do it, right? But the truth is that, I mean, it happens. It's going to happen. But once we were blunt and it was all out in the open, I think we both understood. Oh, okay, I get it now. I understand why you thought that way, why you didn't, and we rectified it. We corrected it. But what was it? It was communication, right? It was communication about it. It was, and so when I look at leading up, if you don't have good communication, you're not open, you're not honest, you're not transparent about things, it's never going to happen, right? You're not going to be able to lead up. You're not going to have that culture surrounding it. Same thing with empowering people. I can bluntly just give people and broadly give people empowerment skills and saying do it. But again, now it's swim lanes, right? If I give them too much, now expect too much, or expect something that they didn't deliver because I didn't give them any guidelines, then we've just eroded the trust. Like, well, I'm not going to do anything anymore because I'm getting hammered every time I come back with something. And that's not what you want. So you want to give guidelines of what those guidelines are going to be. And again, I'm recapping here, but go back to, there is a responsibility by both the leader and by both, for the team member, right? The person that's subordinate, to have and to give leeways for, right? And understand, oh, okay, cool. Because that subordinate needs to know, hey, that person reports to somebody and they represent us. Do I want them representing something that is, or am I just going to turn in and go, F it, I'm just going to give it to them and they'll deal with it? No, right? I know that, well, that's representing me too in some way, shape, or form. Should the leader go in there and blast, well, Diane gave this to me and Diane screwed it all up and, oh man, I got to work with her? No, of course not, right? That shouldn't happen. You take ownership, right? You screw it up, got it. We'll fix it. Most people can handle screw ups. Let's just be honest here. Most people go, all right, you screwed that one up. Go fix it. I don't expect that anymore. Got it. Here's a couple things we learned from the last one. How do we fix it now, right? Now it's not a failure. It's just a mistake that we've learned from. And now we can fix it, right? Because we've got to, right? Because that's the other part of it, right? There are things you have to do, whether it's you have to meet a certain sales goal, you have to go, take an objective, right? Or you have to get, I don't know, guys have to sell so many fries for a time. So you got to be able to do, right? Whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's all on the same level, all the same. Leadership, that's the best part about leadership. And everybody knows this too. You can empower somebody in the service industry. You can empower people in every industry that's out there. Empower them to do stuff. Some of it, like you talked about, is expected. Some of it is not. Some of it has to be guided, right? There's expectations and there's guidance, and that's got to be handed out. And you can always lead up, right? As we look at leading up, and we talk and we recap and really come to the close of this as leading up. You want to be able to have a culture and to have an environment that you're able to not only help your employer, knowing that you're going to get the handshake, the pat on the back to say, hey, thanks a lot. You mean this helped you. right? And that may lead to something. Or you need to make sure that as well that you can speak up and say, hey, that's not right. We need to fix that somehow, some way. And everybody's taking ownership of all their responsibilities, right? And they're responsible to them. Because if you think about leadership, and I'll kind of close with this, but if you think about leadership, whether it's empowering your people, whether it's your people leading up to you, whichever way that directional ladder is going, and that communication and power is shifting to and from, the end of the day, you know, people want to be able to find their purpose, how it fits into what they do, and at the end of the day, know that they did something that was good, right? I mean, I've seen it. My last example I'll give today before I wrap up is, you know, I was in two different areas of operation when I deployed on the carriers. Like I deployed on the USS Kitty Hawk over in Japan, and they were what they love to call a 911 force, where they're there, and if stuff happened, it was going to go down, right? And they would be there for the first whatever of it, right? And then I was in the Gulf, and ISIS had kicked off in 2015, and we were in a very different. We were dropping 500,000 pounds of ordnance on bad guys, and every 35 days for that deployment, we were probably pulling into a port to restock and decompress and energize. We had less instances of bad behavior, is the best way to put it, with everybody across the board on the mission against ISIS than we did the entire time I was on the Kitty Hawk, where we had instances almost every single time we pulled into port. And the reason I look at it is because it was purpose, right? We didn't really have purpose. Our purpose was something that it was loading a jet and not being able to do anything, right? And deterrence. And that never makes it down to the junior ranks about why we're there, right? That's a hard purpose to get to, right? When you're there. But when you're loading a bomb, and that plane comes back and that bomb's not there, and that pilot gets out and goes, dude, I dropped it on a dam. And you're like, oh yeah, right? And our commanding officers and our senior leadership were like, we're going to show the videos of to people on the mess decks to see the fruits of their labor. Man, that's purposeful. That's really purposeful. You didn't have to get imaginative for that, and you didn't have to figure it out. So my belief is always people want to do their jobs, and they want to do their jobs at the core of them. They want to do a good job. They want recognition, and they want to do a good job. And I think people will do that. So to wrapping it up, look, the empowerment piece is you got to, at the top, when you have the ability to empower them and truly do it. Set your guidelines, set your parameters of what you want, understand that's there. If over time those parameters are there and you can let them up, give them more empowerment, right? Give them more responsibility. Once you've seen and once you've built that kind of trust with them, right? Because it's trust both ways in that case. And then when you do come on a new job, right, or you're in a job, help that person, right? Because it's a reflection of you, right? And again, you're gonna get, if they're good leaders, you're gonna get, not that you're striving for recognition, but it's gonna be recognized the correct way, right? And if people are taking all the credit for it, it's probably not a place you want to work anyways. So listen, we talked about empowerment. We talked about leading up. Excited to kind of those two pieces are very, in my eyes, key to great organizations. They're keys to great cultures, and they're very, in my eyes, they're senior level type of things that good leaders do and work on by trial and error, that make them better. So listen, thanks everybody on this Thursday for joining me on the Flipside Streamcast live on Lions Guide. Check out lionsguide.com if you haven't yet. Go see Dale's doing some great things over on the high performance side. Next week, Dale and I will be on here duking it out in the Lions Den. And after that, we've got Laura Colbert is coming on board to talk about leading generations, which I think is an amazing piece for this for kind of our business leaders today, is how do you lead these generations, especially in this social media world with all the new stuff. And then at the end of the month, we are still reviewing Man in the Arena. So end of the month, we will look at Tom Brady's life and legacy through for the ESPN movies and pick out some leadership points that we saw during each episode to be able to do that. So thanks for stopping by today. I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you guys next week, and always flip out.